This story is titled, My Bride Ghosted Me. 2 weeks before our wedding, for a secret trip with her college friends, she came back acting normal, but I was ready with the truth. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, let's start the video. Hey guys. So this is something I never thought I'd post here, but life's been hitting me like a truck lately, and I just need to get it all out. My name's Jackson, I'm 27, male, and up until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had everything sorted. I was supposed to be getting married to my fiancée, Rachel, 26, female, someone I'd been with for 7 years. 7 years, man, that's almost a quarter of my life. My life was supposed to be simple. Marry the love of my life, build a future together, and live happily ever after. You know, the whole fairy tale thing. Let me give you some context. Rachel and I met in college. She was a freshman, and I was a sophomore. I'll never forget the first time I saw her. She was sitting on the campus lawn with her friends, laughing at something. And she just had this glow about her. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly brighten it up. We started dating after a few casual study sessions that weren't so much about studying as they were about me finding excuses to spend time with her. Over the years, we went through all the highs and lows, final exams, job hunts, that weird phase where I thought growing a beard would make me look rugged. It didn't. She was my rock. The one person I could count on, no matter what. Fast forward to this year, and I finally decided to propose. We talked about marriage before, and I knew she wanted it. But I wanted to wait until I could give her something special. When I popped the question at the diner where we had our first date, she cried and said yes before I could even finish asking. It was one of those moments you never forget. After that, it was all about wedding planning. Let me tell you, if you've never planned a wedding, you have no idea how chaotic it can be. I mean, the sheer number of decisions you have to make. Venue, caterers, flowers, tablecloth colors, and don't even get me started on the seating chart. Rachel was a perfectionist, so every little detail had to be just right. It was stressful, sure, but seeing how excited she was made it worth it. We'd settled on a small garden venue outside the city. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. Everything was locked in, invitations sent, RSVPs coming in, and our family's already in town to help. Rachel's mom was basically living at our house, and my mom had turned the living room into some kind of arts and crafts workshop. Rachel and I had been up late the night before finalizing the seating chart. She was adamant about not putting her college friends near the DJ because they'd make it impossible for anyone else to enjoy the music. I joked that they just bring the energy. But she gave me one of those playful but serious looks, and I caved. Typical Rachel, stubborn, but always with a smile. Honestly, it wasn't just about the seating chart. Lately, it felt like her friends were becoming more important than us. She started spending more nights out with them, brushing me off with, "You don't mind, do you?" Of course, I said I didn't. I didn't want to seem controlling, but it stung when she'd blow off dinner plans with me to hang out with them instead. That night, we laughed and talked about how crazy everything had been. But there was one thing that stuck out. Rachel kept glancing at her phone, smiling at messages, and quickly locking the screen when I looked her way. I didn't ask. Why would I? I trusted her. But now, I can't help but wonder what she was hiding. It wasn't the first time Rachel had just left without saying much. She'd started doing that more often lately, heading out early for coffee or errands, barely leaving a note. I figured it was her way of coping with the stress, but now I realize it wasn't about stress at all. I got up, made some coffee, and waited for her to come back. By the time an hour passed, I started to wonder where she was. I shot her a quick text. "Morning, where'd you head off to?" No response. Maybe she got caught up running errands. Rachel wasn't the type to just vanish, so I didn't let it bother me too much. I decided to get started on my own to-do list for the wedding. We still had to double-check the caterer, finalize the music playlist, and pick up the wedding favors we'd ordered weeks ago. But by the time lunch rolled around and I still hadn't heard from her, I started to feel uneasy. I texted her again. "Hey, everything okay? Haven't heard from you all morning." Still nothing. That's when I called her. It went straight to voicemail. Now that was weird. Rachel always had her phone on her, especially when things were this busy. My first thought was that maybe she'd forgotten to charge it, but even then, she'd usually text me from someone else's phone or leave a note if she'd be gone for a while. I called her mom next, thinking maybe she was with her. Her mom sounded surprised when I asked. No, she didn't say anything to me. "Isn't she with you?" That didn't help my anxiety. Her dad didn't know where she was either, neither did her sister, who who was staying at her parents' house to help with the wedding. At this point, I was pacing the living room, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Maybe she just needed some space. I mean, weddings are stressful, but even then, Rachel would have told me. When dinner time came, and she was still nowhere to be found, I was a wreck. My mind was jumping to the worst conclusions. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. That's when I realized that her car also wasn't in the driveway. She'd vanished completely. I stood there staring out the window like an idiot, trying to piece together what this meant. My first thought was that maybe she'd taken off somewhere unexpected. Maybe to clear her head or deal with some wedding jitters. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Rachel wasn't the type to ghost anyone, especially not 2 weeks before our wedding. I went back upstairs and started looking around, hoping to find some kind of clue. Her clothes were still in the closet, her shoes lined up neatly by the door, her suitcase still in the corner. Untouched. If she had left, she hadn't packed for it. Her purse was gone though, along with her phone charger, which I hadn't noticed before. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. I tried calling her again, voicemail. At this point, I was starting to feel a mix of worry and frustration. Where could she possibly be? I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through our recent texts, trying to find any hints that she might have dropped. Nothing. Our last conversation had been about seating arrangements. And there was no sign of her feeling off or upset. It was just normal. That's when I decided to start calling her friends. First up was Brittany, her closest college friend, straight to voicemail. Then I tried Ashley, another one of her friends. No luck. One by one, I called every single one of her close friends, but none of them answered. It was like they'd all vanished along with her. At this point, I was on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and I wasn't just imagining it. I called her mom again to let her know the update. She tried to reassure me, but I could tell she was just as worried as I was. Maybe she'll show up soon, she said, her voice shaky. I hung up and tried to distract myself, but it wasn't working. I ended up pacing around the house, phone in hand, checking it every 2 minutes like it was a lifeline. I kept thinking, what if something happened to her? My brain went to dark places. A car accident, abduction. I even started Googling news reports for any sign of an incident in our area, but there was nothing. By 9 p.m., I was sitting on the couch, completely drained. I'd gone through every possible scenario in my head, and none of them added up. My thumb hovered over the number for the police station. Reporting her missing felt drastic. But what else was I supposed to do? That's when my phone buzzed. It was Eric, my best friend. He sent me a text that made my stomach drop. Dude, what is Rachel doing in Mexico? Mexico? I quickly typed back, what are you talking about? He didn't answer right away, which only made me more anxious. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, another text came through. Check Instagram, Brittany's story. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. I hadn't been on social media all day, too caught up in my own spiral of worry. I searched for Brittany's profile. And sure enough, her latest story was tagged in Mexico. I clicked on it. There they were, Rachel and her college friends, lounging by the pool at some fancy resort, drinks in hand. Laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. My fiancée, the woman I thought I'd be marrying in 2 weeks, was on a beach vacation in another country. I stared at the screen, feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. She looked happy, carefree, even. Meanwhile, I'd been at home losing my mind, thinking something terrible had happened to her. I went through Brittany's story frame by frame, trying to piece things together. The first clip was a wide shot of the group by the pool, Rachel in the middle, wearing that floral swimsuit she bought just a few months ago. The next one showed them clinking glasses, the caption reading, reunion vibes. Then came a shot of the resort itself, tagged in big, bold letters, Cancun, Mexico. I didn't know what to feel, anger, confusion, betrayal. I was stuck somewhere in between, staring at my phone like it had personally insulted me. I texted Eric again. WTF is this? He replied almost instantly, I don't know, man. Thought you already knew. My mind was racing. Rachel never mentioned anything about a reunion. We'd been together every day leading up to this. There was no way she would have planned something like this without me noticing, or so I thought. I sent Rachel a text, keeping it short and to the point. Where are you? No response. I sent another one, this time angrier. I know you're in Mexico. Call me now. Still nothing. I stared at my phone, waiting for any sign of life from Rachel. My text sat there unanswered, like a slap in the face. Each passing second made me angrier. How could she just leave without telling me? No note, no text, nothing. The sheer lack of basic decency was infuriating. We were 2 weeks away from the wedding. 2 weeks. And instead of being here with me, planning the day we'd been dreaming about for years, she was on a beach in Mexico with her friends, completely ignoring me. I didn't even know how to process it. I thought about everything I'd given to this relationship. 7 years. 7 years of being her rock, her cheerleader, her everything. I'd been there for her through every bad grade, every tough job hunt, every family drama. When she wanted to switch careers, I picked up extra shifts to help cover the bills. When she needed space to focus on herself, I gave it to her without question. I wasn't perfect, but I'd always been there. And now I was sitting alone in our house, completely in the dark, while she was off gallivanting like she didn't have a care in the world. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The sheer disrespect was mind-blowing. I picked up my phone again and sent another text, this time letting all my frustration spill out. Copy of the message: Rachel, let me make this clear. I don't tolerate being ignored. You didn't just pack up and leave. You disrespected me and everything we've been building, sneaking off to Mexico and then ignoring me. That's not something I'm ever going to accept. We're supposed to be getting married in 2 weeks, but you've already shown me what your priorities are, and it's not us. If you're not on the next flight home, consider the wedding canceled. The choice is yours. I'm serious. I stared at the screen for a moment, debating if I should send it. But the anger bubbling inside me wouldn't let me back down. I hit send. Still nothing. I sat there staring at my phone like an idiot, waiting for the reply that never came. Minutes turned into hours. And with each tick of the clock, my anger grew sharper, hotter. Who does this? Who ignores the person they're supposed to marry, especially after pulling a stunt like this? The fury started twisting into something worse: hurt. How could she be so dismissive? How could she treat me, the guy who's done everything for her, like I didn't even matter? By the time my phone buzzed late that evening, hours after I'd reached out, she finally decided I was worth a second of her time. Rachel, at last. Too bad I wasn't in the mood to play nice anymore. I answered immediately, my voice sharp. Where the hell are you? Her response was so casual it made my skin crawl. I'm in Mexico. I told you I was going on this trip. You what? I said, my voice rising. Rachel, you didn't tell me anything. You just disappeared. No text, no note, nothing. I thought something had happened to you. She sighed, like I was being dramatic. I didn't think it was a big deal. My friends planned this as a reunion, and I didn't want to disappoint them. They went all out for me. Jackson. Disappoint them? I shot back. What about disappointing me, the guy you're supposed to be marrying in 2 weeks? Do you have any idea what this looks like? It's just a trip, she said, her tone dismissive. I'll be back in a few days, and we can move on. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. My hands clenched into fists as I tried to keep my composure. Rachel, this isn't just about the trip. It's about the fact that you ghosted me. You didn't think I should be informed where you were going, or that you'd be gone for days. I didn't ghost you, she said defensively. I just didn't tell you. I knew you'd react like this, so I thought it'd be easier to just go. React like what? Like a man who deserves basic respect from his fiancée? I said, my voice cold and steady. Rachel, we're supposed to be partners, but you don't seem to understand what that means. You're acting like a single woman with no responsibility. You don't get to make decisions like this on your own and expect me to just go along with it. She let out an exaggerated sigh. They told me last minute, Jackson. I didn't have time to explain everything, okay? I don't see why you're making this such a big deal. It's just a few days. I'll be home soon. Can we not turn this into some huge drama? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My voice hardened. This isn't about drama, Rachel. It's about basic respect. You think last-minute excuses justify sneaking off without a word? Do you even understand what it means to be a partner? I've given everything to this relationship, sacrificed for us. In 2 weeks before the wedding, this is what you decide to do? Unacceptable. She stayed silent for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand how badly she'd messed up. But then she said, I needed this trip. My friends planned it. And I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I'm sorry if that upset you, but I'm not coming home early. And I was floored. I said strictly, hear me out. If you don't come back on the next flight, there's no wedding or a man to come back to. Her tone shifted, growing colder. I'll be back in a few days. Let's talk about it then. You're overreacting. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at my phone, disbelief washing over me. She wasn't just dismissing my feelings, she was doubling down on her selfishness. I'd poured everything I had into this relationship. And now it felt like she was throwing it all away. For the first time, I started to question if I really knew the person I was about to marry. That thought lingered as I sat in the quiet of the house we'd made a home. Rachel's voice, dismissive and cold, echoed in my head. You're overreacting. Overreacting? Was I? Part of me wanted to believe her, to tell myself that this was just stress, a temporary lapse in judgment. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how deliberate her choices had been. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal of trust. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, replaying our conversation, trying to figure out if there was ever a time I treated her with the same disregard she showed me. I couldn't think of a single moment. I thought about all the times I canceled plans with my friends just to be with her, how I always put her first. And now here I was, feeling like an afterthought. But if this is how she acts now, 2 weeks before our wedding, how am I supposed to trust her later? Marriage is about being a team, and it's clear she's not someone I can rely on when it actually counts. The more I thought about it, the more I realized someone like her just doesn't fit in the kind of life I'm trying to build. By the time the sun came up, it was obvious she wasn't coming back, and I wasn't going to sit around waiting anymore. I flipped the switch into full-on action mode. I knew exactly what I had to do. The first call I made was to the venue. My voice was calm, steady, like I'd already decided this 100 times over in my head. I need to cancel the wedding, I told the coordinator. There was a pause, then a quiet. I'm sorry to hear that. It wasn't just the venue. One by one, I called every vendor we'd booked, the caterer, the photographer, the DJ. Each call chipped away at me a little more, but I forced myself to push through. I had to. The wedding couldn't go on, not after this. Of course, canceling wasn't cheap. I paid the penalties and cancellation fees, watching as thousands of dollars disappeared. The money wasn't even the issue. It was the finality of it all. Each payment felt like a nail in the coffin of the life I'd been building with Rachel for the past 7 years. When the calls were done, I turned my attention to the guest list. Some of them were Rachel's friends who were with her on that trip. I drafted a message to let everyone know the wedding was off. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I kept it straightforward and respectful. I won't copy and paste the exact words here. But I explained enough for people to understand that Rachel had made choices that showed me this relationship wasn't what I thought it was, and I couldn't go through with it. Once I hit send, there was no turning back. Some replies were immediate. A few people sent their support, saying I was brave for standing up for myself. Others were more cautious, asking if there was a chance to work things out. One person, Rachel's college friend Brittany, had the audacity to respond with, "Wow, you're really airing your dirty laundry like this? Immature much." I didn't reply. I didn't have the energy. My parents, however, were less understanding when I told them what I'd done. Their reactions hit me like a freight train. "You canceled the wedding?" My mom said, her voice sharp with disbelief. Without even waiting for her to come back and explain, "She's in Mexico with her friends." "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "she didn't tell me. She ghosted me, and now she's refusing to come home. What was I supposed to do?" "Talk to her," she said firmly. "You've been together for 7 years, Jackson. You don't just throw that away because of one mistake." "She didn't make a mistake," I shot back. "She made a choice, a deliberate choice to lie to me and put herself first." My dad, who'd been silent up until this point, finally chimed in. "We're not saying what she did was right, but you're making a big decision in the heat of the moment. Maybe give it some time before you finalize anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents, the people who'd always supported me, were now questioning my judgment. It made me feel like I was on an island, isolated and alone. The situation only got more complicated when Rachel's parents showed up later that evening. They looked confused, hurt, and desperate for answers. "Jackson," her mom said as soon as I opened the door, "what's going on?" "Rachel hasn't told us anything. All we know is that the wedding's off." I invited them in, and we sat in the living room. I explained everything. The trip, the lies, the way she brushed me off when I confronted her. Her dad's face grew darker with every word, while her mom's eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand," her mom said. "She was so excited about the wedding. Why would she do something like this?" "I wish I had an answer for you," I said honestly. "But the truth is, I don't even know who she is anymore." Her dad shook his head, his jaw tight. "We'll talk to her. She needs to come home and fix this. Good luck with that." I muttered, bitterness creeping into my voice. "She didn't listen to me, and she's not answering your calls either, is she?" They stuck around a little longer, but honestly, there wasn't much left to say. When they finally left, the silence was heavy, but I didn't mind it. I needed the space to think. Sure, doubt crept in for a moment. 7 years isn't easy to walk away from. But then I reminded myself, respect isn't negotiable, and I'm not about to settle for someone who doesn't get that. Still, part of me wonders. Do you guys think I overreacted by canceling the wedding? Should I have waited, let her explain everything in person? Or was I right to stand my ground? I know I can't ignore the signs, but sometimes it's hard to not second guess. Anyway, I'll update if anything changes. Thanks for reading, and let me know what you think. Would you have done the same? Update 1. Hi guys. Before I jump into the update, let me address some of the comments calling me overreacting or immature for calling off the wedding. Look, I get it. Maybe from the outside it seems dramatic. But let me ask you this. How many of you would be cool with your fiancé disappearing 2 weeks before the wedding, lying about where they are, and ignoring your calls? This isn't just a one bad decision kind of thing. It's a respect thing. If you think I should have just shrugged and said, no big deal, honey, enjoy your secret getaway, then well, good luck with that and your own relationships. Me? I'm not about to spend the rest of my life wondering if I matter to the person I'm with, and this update will just prove me right. Anyway, on to the juicy part. So the other day, Eric texted me again. Bro, it gets worse. The message read. Attached was a screenshot of another Instagram story. It wasn't on Brittany's profile, though. It was on Rachel's. But here's the thing. I couldn't see it on my account because she put it on her close friends list, and apparently I wasn't on it. The screenshot showed Rachel sitting at an outdoor table, holding hands with someone. The caption read, some things never change. My stomach sank. I zoomed in on the picture. And that's when I saw him, David, her ex. And just like that, everything clicked into place. The lies, the casual dismissal, the trip itself, none of it was about stress or relaxation. It was about him. Apparently, Rachel hadn't just gone to Mexico with her friends, she'd gone to reconnect with her past, with the guy she used to date before me. The guy she had always brushed off as just a part of my life before we met. I felt a new wave of anger flood through me. Any doubt I'd been carrying about canceling the wedding disappeared in an instant. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't making a mistake. Rachel had made her choices. And they showed me exactly where her priorities were. Then my phone buzzed again. Rachel was calling. I didn't feel the urge to pick up. I let it ring until it stopped, and then it started again. I ignored that one too. A few minutes later, the texts started coming in. The first one was short and desperate. I wish this was a joke. I didn't reply. She wanted this to be a joke? Fine. She turned our relationship into one, so maybe it was fitting. Around that time, her friends started trashing my name to anyone who would listen. I started hearing through mutuals that I was controlling and immature for calling off the wedding. They said I overreacted, that I couldn't handle Rachel having her own life. The irony wasn't lost on me. These were the same friends who encouraged her to lie and sneak off in the first place. I ignored it. But the audacity of them trying to make me the villain just added fuel to the fire. But when the calls and texts didn't work, Rachel must have realized she wasn't going to get through to me that way. The next day, I heard her car pull up outside the house. It seemed that the trip was over, and I didn't have to check to know it was her. I stayed where I was, sitting in the living room, waiting. The doorbell rang, and then there was constant knocking. Jackson. Rachel's voice cracked through the door. Please, just let me in. We need to talk. I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and opened it. I didn't step aside. I stood in the doorway, blocking her path. My arms were crossed, my face calm but firm. Rachel looked like a mess. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Please, Jackson, we need to talk. You can't just do this. We're supposed to get married in 2 days. There's no wedding, I said. My voice steady and cold. You made sure of that. Her face crumpled as she shook her head. No, this isn't right. We've been together for 7 years. You can't just throw that away. Throw it away? I let out a bitter laugh. Rachel, you threw it away. You threw it all in the trash when you lied to me, when you left without telling me, and when you decided this trip was more important than us. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. Do you even understand what you've done? I gave you everything, Rachel. I supported you when no one else did. I stood by you when you doubted yourself. And this is how you repay me? By sneaking off to Mexico with your friends and ignoring me like I'm some inconvenience, like I'm nothing? Her tears flowed harder. It wasn't like that. She said weakly, I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me? I repeated, my voice sharp. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew this would hurt me. And you did it anyway because you only cared about what you wanted. She reached out, but I stepped back, holding up a hand to stop her. Don't, I said firmly. She stared at me. Desperation written all over her face. I love you, Jackson. Please, you have to believe me. You just what? I cut her off sharply. Needed to relax? Needed to reconnect? Or maybe you needed to parade around with your ex and broadcast it like it was some kind of trophy moment. Her face drained of color. I didn't mean for that to happen. But it did. I said coldly, keeping my voice steady and firm. And it wasn't just me you disrespected. You embarrassed me, dragged my name through the dirt, and made me look like a fool to everyone. Do you even understand the weight of what you've done? Or is accountability just a foreign concept to you? She broke down, her sobs echoing through the doorway. I just wanted to say goodbye to him. She whispered. Goodbye. I repeated. Rachel, you're supposed to be marrying me. What the hell do you need to say goodbye to your ex for? She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. It wasn't about him, Jackson. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I needed closure before we started our new life together. At that point, I felt nothing but contempt. You've had 7 years to get closure. 7 years to let go of the past. And instead, you chose now, 2 weeks before our wedding, to go chasing after it? Do you even hear yourself? Do you realize how ridiculous you sound? She didn't answer. She just stood there crying, begging me with her eyes. But I was done. I had nothing left to give. You ruined this, Rachel. My voice steady and calm, not me. She sobbed, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I'm not the one who threw us away, I said, stepping back into the house. You already did that. Now you have to live with it. I started to close the door. She reached out, grabbing the edge. Jackson, please. I'll do anything. Just let me explain. This is over, Rachel. We're over. I closed the door and locked it. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Final update. Hey everyone. This is the last update to the chaos that's been my life for the past few weeks. Buckle up because things didn't just fizzle out quietly. Rachel found new ways to make a mess. And let's just say I'm more than ready to close this chapter for good. So after I shut the door on Rachel that night, I didn't hear from her again, not directly anyway. I figured she'd gone back to her parents' house to sulk and spin her side of the story. At first, it felt strange not having any contact after 7 years together, but honestly, the silence was better than the drama, or so I thought. Turns out, Rachel wasn't content with just fading into the background. Since I blocked her on all social media and my phone, she decided to get creative. Remember that group message I sent to the wedding guests to let them know the wedding was off? Yeah, Rachel got a hold of that list. She started sending messages to those same people, trying to paint herself as the victim in all this. The messages were wild. A couple of friends forwarded them to me because they figured I'd want to know what she was saying. In these messages, Rachel claimed I'd overreacted, refused to talk things through, and threw away our relationship over what she called misunderstanding. Oh. And she conveniently left out the part about sneaking off to Mexico and hiding it from me. According to her, she just needed a break and was pressured into going by her friends. Some of the people who forwarded me the messages said they were confused and wanted my side of the story, but honestly, most of them were on my side already. They saw through her act and told me they didn't buy her excuses. One friend even replied to her saying, "If you were so innocent, why'd you block him from seeing your close friend's story?" That made me laugh. As for my parents, they were still a bit iffy on how I handled things at first. My mom couldn't stop with the whole 7 years is a long time to throw away line, and my dad, while quieter, was clearly unsure too. I didn't blame them. From their perspective, it probably looked like I was being impulsive. But then Rachel's antics came back to bite her. Apparently, she couldn't resist venting to a mutual acquaintance who also happened to know about the guy she was cozying up with in Mexico. Long story short, word got back to my parents about the whole holding hands with the ex situation, and let's just say their opinion shifted fast. My mom went from maybe you should give her another chance to you're better off without her practically overnight. My dad, he just shook his head and said, well, that explains a lot. Rachel didn't stop at texting our mutual friends. She also tried to rope in some of my friends to advocate for her. One of my best friends, Eric, the guy who originally sent me the screenshot of her in Mexico, got a message from her asking him to talk some sense into me. Eric, being Eric, he didn't hold back. He told her flat out that she was the one who messed up and that I owed her nothing. Apparently, she didn't take it well because she blocked him after his reply. Classic. The final nail in the coffin came when Rachel showed up at her parents' house unannounced, according to them, crying about how she had nowhere to go. Her parents, who had been trying to stay neutral in all of this, ended up calling me. They wanted to know if there was any chance I'd reconsider and at least talk to her. My answer? A polite but firm no. I told them I'd made my decision and that I wasn't interested in revisiting it. They didn't push after that. Since then, things have finally started to settle down. Rachel seems to have run out of steam, probably because most people saw through her act. I've been focusing on myself and getting back to the things I let slide during the relationship. It feels good to finally have clarity and control over my life again. Now I can honestly say I don't regret how I handled things. Rachel showed me exactly who she was. And while it hurt to realize that, it also made my decision a lot easier. Respect and trust aren't optional in a relationship, and once those are gone, there's no going back. Thanks for following along, everyone. I appreciate all the support and insight you've shared. This is officially the end of everything, and I'm ready to move on, and I hope she is too. Take care. And if you're ever in a situation like this, remember you deserve better, always.